Welcome, everyone, to our in-person guests and our virtual guests. Thank you for coming. We're happy you're here, especially on this not springy-like day. Okay. My name is Christine Kariba, and I'm the Environmental and Sustainability Specialist here at the library. And I wanted to just highlight 3 upcoming programs that felt particularly relevant because they all have to do with birds, which will hopefully be flying to your native gardens. So the first is next Wednesday, we have Earth Lounge, our environmental book discussion that meets every other month. This month's read is The Backyard Bird Chronicles by Amy Tan, and we have a few copies there in the back. Feel free to read whatever amount and come. We'd love to have you. The next is April 17th. We're having a bird making workshop co-hosted with Brooks Middle School Environmental Action Team, BEAT. And it's based on an art project meant to spread awareness of bird collision prevention. And lastly, our last bird event coming up is April 23rd. We're co-hosting with the Village of Oak Park and One Earth Film Festivals a watch party of the film Every Little Thing, which is beautiful. And it's all about hummingbirds. So you can find out all about those events and more on our webpage. I don't know if you know, we have a whole page dedicated to sustainability on the Oak Park Library page. Thank you for the plug. So it's oppl.org/sustainability. And you can find links to all of these events and more going on in Earth Month and year round. So we hope to see you at any or all of those. Now on to today's program. So we're very excited to be collaborating with West Cook Wildlands and the Village of Oak Park on today's program, Native Gardening for the Neighborhood, Design, Planting, and Maintenance. So I'm going to pass the mic to our Chief Sustainability Officer of the Village of Oak Park, Lindsay Muraka.
All right. Thank you very much, Christine. I'm super excited to be here, super excited to see all of you here in the room, and thank you to those of you who are joining us on Zoom as well. It's so exciting to be in a community with such strong partnerships with the library and with organizations like West Cook Wildlands. So I'm only going to spend a couple minutes with you here to talk about a couple of opportunities the village has. I should introduce myself again. I'm Lindsay Naratka. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer for the Village of Oak Park. So one of the first things I want to make you aware of is the Parkway Ordinance, which the Village Board of Trustees is going to be voting on Tuesday, this Tuesday. And what this ordinance does is it does create a clarification of some of the roles of maintenance of the village parkways and expressly gives permission to plant gardens in the parkway adjacent to your home. So that's part of what inspired doing an educational program like this to help learn how to use that space to plant more native gardens, to support pollinators, and that's what our speakers are going to be talking to you about today as well. So we do have some questions for you if you want to give us some feedback on this. We're looking for what you all would need to be able to use your parkways to support native plants, and any kind of concerns or questions you have, so that when we're developing more outreach around this new ordinance, that we know what people need. So if you scan this QR code, it takes you to something called a Mentimeter, which is just 2 questions. There's also a link that's being put in the chat for those of you on Zoom, and we also have some paper copies in the back when we're done here for anyone who just doesn't like the QR codes. I'm with you. I appreciate that. So opportunities for everyone. There's also this QR code at the front and over on the side as well for later. So if you don't get it up now, that's fine. Another opportunity we have in the village, and our applications just went live on Friday, is our energy efficiency grants. And this is another, I'm going to point to another one of our partners in the room, which is OPCAN, the Oak Park Climate Action Network. Their Climate Coaches program is a great first step to figuring out what you can do that you can perhaps get a grant from the village on. And so these energy efficiency grants, they are reimbursement grants once you've done the work, but we support weatherization, energy audits, windows and doors, electrification of HVAC systems, water heaters, and we've also added this year to these grants renewable energy systems and also electrical upgrades, which wasn't a part of the program in previous years. So for those of you who would like to do some of these things but need to do the electrical upgrades first, we've got you. So those grants went live, the applications went live on Friday. It's we have 3 tiers based on income: a $10,000 grant, $5,000 grant, and $1,000 grant, depending on your income level. So more information can be found on our website around that. And again, we have OPCAN in the back. So if you have any questions, not sure what to do, their Climate Coaches program is a great opportunity to figure out what's best. And then another opportunity we have, and we also have more information on our table on the side over here, is our Climate Ready Rainscapes grant. You may remember in the past we had a program called Rain Ready. So this is similar to that program, and this is a $2,000 grant to help do rain gardens, permeable pavers, and other kind of capturing rainwater and keeping your basements from flooding type of work using nature-based systems. So one caveat that I will give about this is we do have a wait list from the previous Rain Ready grants, and the people on that wait list will have kind of first access to this, but keep your eye on this as well. And then Christine mentioned a lot of great things that are happening over the next couple of months. April is Earth Month. It's upon us. We have a list of more activities on the table in the back and on our sustainable events page on the village website. But one thing that I thought might be of particular interest to this group is something that we're participating in this year, which is the City Nature Challenge. This is a global BioBlitz. Communities all around the world on almost every continent, maybe not Antarctica, are participating in this challenge. All you need is the iNaturalist app, and during the 4 days, the last weekend of April, take observations of wild plants, animals, fungus, anything not cultivated. So not the plants in your garden, but the insects visiting your plants in the garden would be good things to capture. And it contributes to the Chicagoland Region project. And it's a bit of a competition too. So we'll see how we do globally and how the community ranks. And that is it for me today. So I am going to pass it over to Adrian from West Cook Wildlands. Thank you so much.
Oh, hey, everybody. My name is Adrienne Ayers-Fisher, and I am the advocacy chair for West Cook Wildlands. And a lot of you, I see a lot of faces that I know out there. This is a really exciting event for us. We haven't had anything this big since before the pandemic live. And it's also really exciting because of the collaboration with the library and with the Village of Oak Park. It just, you know, it's synergy, right? I mean, you get together and you work and then you can do a lot more. So for those of you who aren't really familiar with Wildlands, we're a national organization connecting people and native plants for a healthy planet. And we're all about the education, advocacy, and collaboration. Okay, why is this not? All right. Okay, but it's not clicking.
It's not clicking.
Okay, there we go. Okay, this way. All right, so I should have brought my own clicker. Anyway, so we are a local chapter, and we cover, as you could say, West Cook, but we do go into Chicago. We go north, we go south. We are member-based, and we're very grateful to our members because of all the support. We get volunteers. The money helps fund our free monthly programs. We have Zoom programs and a YouTube channel. We have the plant sale, which is going on right now, which you'll hear more about. We have a native garden tour in July. We have community projects, and we have our fabulous grant program, which we give grants to churches, nonprofits, schools, community garden groups, and it's just another way to get native plants in the ground. And there's fun volunteer opportunities. It's a great way to make some new friends. So our native plant sale 2025 pre-orders are right now until May 11th. And the really amazing part of our partnership with Oak Park is that Oak Park residents will get $20 off their order for orders of $20 or more. So if you get in there, there's a potential for free plants. Now, if you're like me and you over order, I didn't really save any money. I just ordered more plants. But it's cool. It's really wonderful. Also, I should point out that West Cook members get 10% off. So if you feel like joining up, you get an automatic 10% off. So you can use the QR code, and our plants do go fast. People come in from other suburbs, from Chicago, the order, and we're kind of known as a hub. So get your orders in. We also have the Garden for Nature grants, which is open now. They are due April 5th. And as I was saying, we have helped many organizations here in Oak Park and Forest Park in Chicago, all the way up to Evanston, out a little west, down to LaGrange. And right now, I hear that the Harwood Heights Public Library might be applying. I was kind of pushing them to do that. So, go for it. If you know some people that need a little bit of help getting some native plants in the ground and they're a group, we are here to help. Let's see. Oh, yes, this is the exciting part. I'm here to announce and introduce probably my favorite horticultural power couple.
Yeah, matching outfits.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I have to look up their bios because I've known them for a while. They're like people you love to meet at, say, Wild Things Conference or something like that and share a table, you know? Okay, so Christine started gardening alongside her grandma as a young child, which led to a long and varied horticultural career, which included 25 years as horticultural programs manager at Chicago's John G. Shedd Aquarium. And if you've ever been around there recently, the last 10 years, just fabulous, fabulous gardens. Her efforts there included not only native habitat gardens, but food gardens that feed both people and the aquarium's animal collection, locally sourced food for the fish. She has served on the boards of several ecologically sustainable land use organizations, and now is on the board of the Land Conservancy of McHenry County, and serves as a mentor for the Wildflower Preservation Committee, and she grows all kinds of food, most of it from seed. Ken Williams has worked in horticulture for over 30 years. He first fell in love with native flora while hiking alpine meadows in his native Colorado. Later, he found a similar beauty in the tall grass prairies of southeast Kansas. He combined his interest with a lifetime of vegetable gardening to develop effective native garden maintenance techniques. And that's one of our most popular YouTube videos, is a talk that Ken has given for us about that. For 16 years, he applied these techniques to the landscape of a 100-acre city park and zoo. And since 2008, often collaborating with his wife, Christine Nye, he has participated in the Chicago area ecological landscape movement. So welcome, Christine and Ken. Yes.
Hi. I understand Ken wrote those intros. It's very complimentary, Ken, thanks. Yeah, I did start gardening with my grandmother. She lived in a neighborhood in Chicago where they were building the Edens Expressway and the Kennedy back in the day. And so her yard was the last yard left on the block when they moved the rest of the houses to put in the highway. Yeah, but bonus. So she ended up with a giant south-facing double lot garden where she grew everything. We grew pears and currants and My grandfather was made wine, every kind of vegetable you can imagine. So I guess when you bend the twig early, it grows crooked. And here I am, crooked. Okay, this.
One on the right.
Yeah. Okay, and this is just a warning. This is my favorite, this is my spirit animal. And it was gifted to me by my former colleagues at the aquarium. Only the one they gifted me was breathing fire and hanging onto the cupola of the building with its claws. So, if you're gonna have, this is a trigger warning, that's what it is. I'm gonna trigger you all day. I'm here to talk about design, which when I first was invited, I thought, design? Don't you just do it? I just do it, and I'll tell you how. And I came upon this in the translation of design, which really threw me. Significant enclosure. No, we don't need this. Okay, then I thought, wait, there's all kinds of design. There's mechanical design, graphic design, architectural design, interior design, and then there's garden design way down there at the bottom. But one of these names is not like the others because gardens are alive. It's a whole different kind of design. You have to consider seasonality and growth and how everything's going to change continually, because if it doesn't, if your garden is static, then it's probably dead. Weather, like today's weather. What's today's weather going to do to our gardens? Has anybody got stuff coming up in their yard already? Yeah, they're prepared though. Our little prairie smokes are peeking through the snow. Well, then I saw this, a quote from, the Zen gardener, Roy. A garden's location is the single most important aspect of design. And when I first read that, I sort of thought it was kind of simplistic, but it's beautifully simplistic in that it covers the whole thing right there in one sentence, because your garden will be affected by where it is. And parkways are pretty tough. Okay, I'm lost. Yeah, you laugh. I touched the keyboard. I don't want it. What if I just touch something else? Nope. There. Look at that. I did it. Yeah, this covers everything. Here's the thing. Your job as a gardener is to go out and be with your garden. You have to be there all different times of day, all different seasons. You need to develop an understanding of what's going on there, because that's what's going to drive the design. What you have, where your planting spot is going to only allow you to grow certain plants successfully. You can try. I know I'm a sinner. I've gone to the garden center and come home with all kinds of inappropriate things, but you'll learn soon that they were inappropriate, and then you'll have to listen to the plants because they're the ones that are in charge. There's too many things. Okay, here's what I think. This is what I use to evaluate gardens. And it might be just as confusing as those other. Complexity. Complexity is what makes you want to look at a garden. You think, wow, look at that. It's interesting. Coherence. It works together. Legibility. You can read the design. and mystery, my personal favorite. So I'm going to go through some slides that show us different examples of this. I can't do this. All right, so it's very exciting that you now have an ordinance that allows you to parkway garden. Although parkways, poor parkways, they've lived a really hard life. They've had foot traffic for who knows how many years. They've had dogs visit them. They've been dug up 1,000 times by the maintenance crews. They've got salt during snow events in the winter. What are you going to plant there? This is a really inhospitable site. Well, there are things that'll live there, depending on how much sun and moisture you get. Click it. Oh, it's the other one. This one.
It's not happening.
Can I do it here? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, do you have to point it at something? Sorry. Technology. I can't see. Okay, so if you want to have complexity, you're going to do what? You're going to plant in groups, you're going to plant densely, you're going to have texture, line, and form all working together. How do we just do this? Where'd he go? There we go. Okay, so look. Thank you. What did you do? This?
I have no idea.
I'll do it. Okay, yeah, I forget. Okay, so here's a park, not a parkway, but here's an alleyway garden that is very complex and very interesting. I think it draws you in, makes you want to go down there and see what's going on. They've done it with a repeat of colors and a repeat of shapes, and shapes that contrast against each other. Makes it very interesting. Okay, here's another really complex garden. It's so complex, you get lost in there. I think they were trying to do something, but there are too many of the same textures for it to be as interesting as this garden. Coherence. This is where we talk about balance and proportion and repeating color and form. Now here's a little parkway garden that I was judging in Chicago for a garden group. And it's perfect. It's just perfect. It's in a really shady spot. Actually, these are really gigantic buckthorns that are growing in your front yard. But they're mature trees now, and we're just going to leave them there. But you can see how they've used mounding and a repeat of plants to make it interesting. And then across the sidewalk, got taller things in front of the windows to add a little privacy. Also, you can see that this bottom part here is a parkway, and they already have added extra space at the curb so that people coming and getting out of their cars can actually do so without tromping through your garden, but they'll tromp through it anyway. And there are also pavers, if you so choose, to make your way through. Here's another garden. Also, they've added the space along the parkway, and we've got a balance of colors and shapes of plants. And I like that they only put the fence on the backside so that people that haven't been to your neighborhood before, when they come in in the night and they can't see what they're doing, don't impale themselves on your fence. But they've left it open here for the mechanical piece so that when the utilities workers come, they don't have to tear your whole garden up. They could just work off the sidewalk. Little practical things. Legibility, which is the story that the garden tells. Also done with focal point, mass effect. And what we want to do with that is create definitions so that we can read it. And here's a really simple design, similar to the one that was so complex that you couldn't discern what was going on. But you can see these big carrots have created space within the design so that you can watch the wine cups wind their way through and actually appreciate the other things in the space. Instead of this. This is over enthusiasm, is what this is. Here's another couple of examples. Very simple designs. But you know that they're designs. You can see the design. You can read it. Very appropriate to this situation. I love this one. Now here's someone that has the opportunity to grow the parkway up against their other yard, be it a side yard or front yard, I don't know. But the white swan echinacea just pulls the whole thing together. You know that this was intended. And it works in the winter too, because don't forget about seed heads. They add a lot of interest. And here it still carries the design across this space. And mystery. You want people to want to look at your garden. You can always add a surprise or two, be it an odd plant, be it a change of a focal point, be it a giant tree that's in the middle of your parkway. I'm sure a lot of you are going to have to deal with this, but just leaving it a little space and letting it be the focal point really works here. You can see the little fence all the way around. They don't care about liability. Now, this is a mystery. What's going on here? This is persistent water, it looks like. I don't know if the water is coming out of the, you think so? Or going in. But you kind of get a clue that it's intentional because these plants are plants that like wet feet. So they're there for a purpose. And if you follow the design back through the rest of the garden, you can see this water is going to come through where these rocks are. And the gardener knows that. And the gardener has put these stones here to slow that down. I think it makes a nice visual impact, but it also has a practical aspect in that it'll keep your garden from eroding away as quickly. Here's a little, this is a courtyard planting, and it's very succinct on this side. And then if you go around to the other side, oh wait, can I go around to the other side? That's where your mystery starts. And here too, this one obviously isn't planted yet, but the rocks show you where the water is going to be. And when that gets planted, it's going to draw you in. That's going to be like a graphic line. And here's some real fun. It's a playground. It's a sculpture. It's a good way to deal with cutting down a tree on your property. It's just going to add back to the soil as it decomposes. And I can't wait to see this garden when the plants that are here along the two sides grow in. Then it'll be like a fun house. Now, here are some plants that you can use in shade gardens, and they fit into your restrictions from your ordinance. Yeah, good. Take a picture. I think we have all of these in our home garden. I know we definitely have dicentra. The one on the left is Dutchman's breeches. What? Oh, go back, sure. Okay, ready? Oh, did you make it? Okay. Okay, good. Okay, so the one on the left is the native Dutchman's breeches, and the one on the right is Bleeding Heart. But to tell you the truth, and I hope I'm not speaking heresy here, but I'm not a purist when it comes to gardening. And if a plant is well behaved and serves a purpose, be it only feeding some of the local wildlife that we have, I'm for it. I've never seen a bleeding heart move into other parts of our garden. And we've been there, what, 16 years? Very well behaved. And I see bumblebees using that in the spring. And also the bluebells, It's hard to beat bluebells. Just make everybody happy, even if it is only for a short while. Okay, here's a little tiny design, but it still expresses some of the same parkway questions that you're going to have to answer. So you can see there, they've added brick along the curbside, so there's room. I'm not quite sure why they put rocks on the tree, but sort of keeping the ginger in line for now. Just a few little shade plants and a small fence. And here are some more of those shade plants working. You can see there's space between these plants on the left side, but it's okay. It's okay, they're working together. They grow more slowly than your plants that are in the sun. And this was something I did at home that is gone now, which I'm sorry. This is pen sedge with a lot of hostas that I had been gifted popping up through it as exclamation points. Unfortunately, I lost this part of the garden because the sun changed and now everything is too hot here. We're still working on that. Now, there's a practical aspect to planting through the carex also. This looks to me like the strappy daffodil leaves that are left over after the blooms. I'm also, I also think it's a good idea to put bulbs in your gardens. There's not a lot going on in the spring. You're already dealing with a really tough spot. And this way, if you plant your bulbs within another matrix of plants, then when they start to die back and they get yellow, you don't have to watch most of it. They'll just sink down behind the grasses or the carex or the bluebells or whatever you planted them with and disappear. And you need to know this for this plant, salvia. This could be one of many different kinds of salvia. And it's pretty when it's blooming. This is a little past its prime, but this is way past its prime. And a lot of people want to put that plant in the front of the bed, but I suggest that you put something else in front of that plant if you want it to be beautiful, because you don't want to be out there cutting every one of these seed heads off. Your plant's going to get really small. You're probably not going to get a good rebloom. Make the plants work with you. Here's some sun plants. Sun plants are easy. There are so many choices. Now, another thing to be really serious about when you're planting any garden is to cover the ground. We have we have 3 plants that we really love. We've been experimenting with them for many years. This is not them. This is an example of good garden design because, it was mine. big mounds of plants. You know, if you have a big space, you can do this, but see what, there again, the carex is making space to hold up all the other plants so you can see that it's intentional. Oh, and this one on the right, this is one of the plants that we recommend. Give it a try. It's called Robin's plantain. And it doesn't normally look like this. That little flower is so pretty. It's a rosette. You can see it along the sidewalk. And then this little flower comes up, this little daisy. Looks like a cross between an English daisy and a fleabane. Oh, when it comes up through spirabolas that are just coming forth, oh, it's fantastic. Lasts, I don't know, three weeks in May. Then you can clip all those off or they'll just fade away. And on the right, you still got the rosette that's, I wouldn't say aggressive, but it's strong. And it will cover the ground between all your other plants, so you don't have to worry about weed pressure so much. Because weeds are a gardener's life. And on the other side, we see the prairie smoke, which is also a great ground cover. Now, here, this was our side yard back when I was able to have the pen sedge and the hostas growing. This is our side yard, and there were a few trees in there, and these violets just kept reproducing and reproducing and reproducing. And this is another plant that's really great for using as a ground cover, so you hold down the weeds. Now this space is also a thing of the past because it got too shady in there. But for a while, it was beautiful. Here's our front yard. And in the spring, I've spent a lot of time just adding bulbs here and there. Because really, not much else is happening. You can see where the prairie smoke is coming up, the little pink line. And my serviceberry is really happy, one little baby serviceberry. But even as the garden comes up, the bulbs, I don't have to go out and cut all those leaves back from the bulbs because they're all getting absorbed into this green jungle. But not the prairie smoke. The prairie smoke is still popping up. Can you tell? It's one of my favorite plants. And here it is. It's bloomed. It's going into its seed stage, so it's going to have this pretty little wispy flower head that maintains. Here it is later in the season, and it's still up there, and it's still doing its job covering the ground. And in the foreground, you can see there's still a Robin's plantain there working. Now these penstemons, we got these for free from the garden because they just keep giving. I think we started out with 5 or 6. And over time, we kept the seed heads and they seeded themselves in the cracks of the sidewalk. We've taken all those little babies and replanted them throughout the garden. So after the garden really starts to come on, you get this giant flush of penstemon. And here it is in the fall. And even into the winter, it's just the most beautiful thing. Okay, back to parkways. Okay, so on the left, you can see how there seems to be a consortium of neighbors here that have agreed that they're all going to do their parkways the same way. I think it's a good look, and it's nice if you have company while you're out there gardening. This is such a great opportunity. I mean, you have an opportunity to beautify the land in front of your house, create habitat for pollinators, help educate your neighbors, and you want it to be beautiful because you want them to emulate what you're doing, to spread the natives further. This little corner parkway, I think, puts me in the mind of how this lower level, it looks like a porous rock layer that they put here. And I thought, how smart, because you know every corner in the city of Chicago and the environs is going to flood during a rain event. All the storm drains are going to be clogged up at the same time, and it's going to pour into the garden. But here, they've turned this into a little bioswale. So double Benny, you still have the plants above and something else working below. This may have been a depression in their front yard. I don't know what the rules are for having something like a pond in your front yard. Seems like you might have to have some sort of restriction around it. Okay, why do I have this? Oh, because this is part of our yard too. And it just shows you how, oh, my salvia is way back next to the little, between the hydrangea and the spruce. Because I just want to see it when it blooms. We also have this, what is it? Larkspur, the blue larkspur on the right side, which seeds itself through all of our gardens. And I don't mind because it's a July plant. That's my birth flower. Into the fall, serviceberry. Now see this little oak here, there's a spruce, and then there's a little oak in front of it, really small. We have very ambitious squirrels in our neighborhood. They plant acorns everywhere. And Ken decided at one point, why take them out? Why not just bonsai them in the front yard? You can still let the oak be there and do its job and work with its pollinators, but it only has to be this tall instead of eliminating it. And adjacent to that, it looks prettier in person. You can see the Amsonia here on the right is lighting up the space, and so is this Millennia. Now, this is a no-no, and I'm taking names, okay? Because this is another garden that I was forced to visit and grade on its sustainability at some point in my life. And they're doing a great job at doing everything absolutely wrong. Nothing but lily of the valley up front. People say, oh, it smells so good. Yeah, it does. But that's about it. And the English ivy going up the tree, every one of their trees was filled with English ivy. Yeah. Shortens the life, hard to get rid of, just never ends. Why not use this? Virginia creeper. It's just the most beautiful vine. Crawls up in your trees, plays nice, doesn't bring down branches, and then it puts out these fruits in the fall. It's just magnificent, and I wish I had a picture of the fall color because, whew, stunning. Now, here's a New England aster, which you could use in a sunny location, but they're pretty tall. So if instead of just letting the plant do whatever it wants, you cut it back, maybe even by half before the beginning of July, it'll bloom later in the season, but it'll stay shorter. So if you're restricted by a 3-foot maximum height, you could still put this in your yard. And it's an easy thing to do. So parkway considerations, check the rules of your community's ordinance, repeat color and form, plant densely, cover the ground, consider visibility. Oh yeah, add a P-rock. That was stressed to us when we talked to some other people that have parkways or actually install them for people. People are going to come with their animals, whether you want them to or not. They're just going to. They might even put them, if you have a little fence, they might even just put them in your garden because that's where the dog should go, right? But if you put, a boulder, a log, does that slide still here? All right, this garden is not planted yet, but see the big log and the rock at the edge of the, if you just put one of those in your garden, all the dogs in the neighborhood will help you because they just want to meet the other dog, right? Through their olfactory. So do a pea rock and have fun. Have fun. I think that's it. Time for Ken.
Okay, working? Yeah. Okay, so I'm doing maintenance. The thing about, we're talking about front yard gardens, things, parkways, front yards, things people are gonna see. So what matters? That it be pretty, If it looks like the one that she had with the flagstone and the stuff going everywhere, if that's what it looks like, then you're guaranteeing nobody in your neighborhood will ever plant native plants. We want them to plant native plants, so we want to do things, we use our backyards for a lot of different things, but our front yards are mainly just to look at. So, as Bonnie Raitt said, let's give them something to look at, give them something to talk about. All right, let's see what we got. Is it this one? Yeah. This is a picture of our garden that I'd used on a previous presentation. And when the garden was 3 years old, this was really pretty. But this, see if I can make this work. No, I'm trying to make the pointer, is that it? Ah, there it is. You're right. There it is. I'll get it, by the end of this, I'll be able to do this. This yarrow, it's actually a cultivar called marmalade. Yarrow is not a long-lived plant. A friend of mine restored a prairie back where I lived in Kansas, and it had been horribly overgrazed for many years. And when we started off, it was short ragweed and yarrow, and that's all that grew there. The cows had eaten everything else. And it took years, but the yarrow is all gone now. You don't find any there. I was there just recently. So your garden's going to change. And what happened here was we had palm sedge, Carex eulenbergii, I believe, in here that turned out to be really aggressive. And it overran all that yarrow, and the place got ugly. And you don't want that. So here's here's what you don't want. If you were out on a hike somewhere and you came around a corner in the trail and you saw this, you'd think it was gorgeous. If you were in your backyard, you might like it. But in the front, that's just not going to work. And what makes a difference is having a gardener, somebody there. If you can hire contractors to try to do this stuff for you, but that contractor doesn't get out of their car at the curb every day and walk into your house and experience what's going on in your front yard. You do. That contractor might come once every week or 2 or 4, and they might do a really good job, but you can do so much better if your head and your heart are wrapped up in what's going on in that garden. So you need somebody who's personally involved, has a personal relationship with the space. So this is our front yard, and I want you to notice a couple of things. Do you guys think that's pretty? I mean, I'm of the opinion that it is, but there's a few things in here that bother me. The liatris that you see, the gay feather here and over here, have a tendency in the garden to fall over. And if anybody's got these in their garden, you've got them sticking off at a 45-degree angle and stuff like that. You notice there aren't any of those in this picture because those liatris in our yard that tip over at weird angles, we cut them off and put them in a vase in the house where we can enjoy them because we're not enjoying looking at them in the yard. And I talked to like Heather Holm and some other people who really know their stuff on insects utilizing plant stems. You know, there's a lot of, oh, you need to leave all your plant stems up all winter so that the insect, the bees and different beetles, they lay eggs in the pithy stems of different kinds of plants. Well, sometimes they're using them when they're 2 or 3 years old. It's not going to happen right away, so you're going to have to leave them there long term. But I asked Heather and a couple other people, when you find those nests in those stems, what's the orientation of that stem? And they said, always perfectly straight up and down. The ones that are tipped over at weird angles, they're never going to use them. So I know Doug Tallamy talks a lot about when you clean up a garden, you know, you might cut off those stems because they're not attractive, but take them somewhere else in your yard and put them upright. Have a grid, something up against a building, something where they're upright, and they still might get utilized. So one thing, when I look at this, you know, you see these sticking off at a weird angle? That's no, and you notice how, even though this is pretty complex, there's actually definition. You can see this is mountain mint growing here. You can see the different things. But right in here, it gets cluttered. And why is it cluttered? Because you've got those stems shooting across there at weird angle. If you snip those off, it's just going to look nicer. It's easier on your eye. So snip those off and then, but don't, you know, I leave them there as long as I can because I want the seeds. The finches are going to, you know, I'm going to enjoy the finches. My front window is right up there and I'm going to enjoy the finches coming and eating the seeds off those echinaceas. But there's going to come a point where I'm tired of looking at them. And one of my, going back to my horticulture career long before I messed with native plants very much, one of my cardinal rules was if you don't like looking at it, cut it off. And yeah, it's gonna make a big difference. It's one of the few things I'm gonna present today that is actually a new idea. If you've seen any of my other presentations I have a YouTube channel, the rest of the stuff, most of these slides you've already seen. But this idea of dealing with the angled stems, I think is meaningful. And this is where you see another funny thing about this presentation. Christine and I, we had access to the same pictures. We made our own presentations, and it was just a couple days ago that we discovered we used a lot of the same slides, and we talk a lot about a lot of the same things. So, you know, don't be surprised, that's going to happen. But the prairie smoke here, everywhere where you see the prairie smoke growing is places where that palm sedge took over. And the palm sedge, all the lines on the palm sedge are very complex. They're shooting off at all different directions. And I know like Monica Buckley at Red Stem, she loves to put palm sedge in front of a rock. And she's got a good point because the rock is all this smooth round. And you put this palm sedge there and it has so much character. But you put it here and it just turns the whole thing into an amorphous green blob. There's nothing enjoyable about looking at it. And after a few years, I got sick of it. It had killed off all the yarrow. And so I dug it all out. And most sedges are pretty easy to dig out. Palm sedge isn't. I dug it all out. And then I learned about the idea of using cool season ground covers. And I had some prairie smoke. And I just started dividing out of the prairie smoke clumps into all the places that I'd cleared out, cleared the palm sedge out. And these areas up here where you don't see any red, yeah, wait a couple of years. Because I have taken, it's a continual thing. I'm always digging divisions off of my prairie smoke and putting it up in other places so it'll fill in. So there will be a living mulch there all the time. And I don't have to deal with the weeds. I just discovered this year that when prairie smoke grows in palm leaf coreopsis, it's really pretty and it stays pretty all summer. Shortly after this picture on the right was taken, the coreopsis bloomed. And then the prairie smoke faded out, but it was pretty for a long time. This is from up at the house, looking at pretty much the same stuff you've been seeing. You see the geraniums over here, the prairie smoke down here. You see all this penstemon, which, like Christine said, penstamon's a short-lived plant. They're going to die out in your garden, but they're going to be coming up, and where they come up, as you can see over here, is right on the edge of our sidewalk. So I'm all the time, especially in the spring, digging up these starts over here, moving them out into the middle. And I'll show you, well, you've actually already seen that picture. And then on the left is the Robbins plantain, which has nice little daisies. It is actually a fleabane. It's Erigeron pulchulus. It's a perennial, like our daisy fleabane, which is an annual. This is a perennial. And this is what the effect you get from having all that penstemon that I'm year after year planting out into the middle. And to me, that brings to mind the same look that you get. This is at Lake in the Hills Fen, which is a beautiful gravel hill prairie remnant. And this is the way plants, we just started messing with plants in this way in the last few hundred years. The plants have been doing it for a long time, and they're really better at us, better than we are at it. So going out to natural areas, especially if you can find prairie remnants and stuff, and look at how the nature puts the compositions together will teach you more than you'll ever learn from any book, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, this is that Robbins plantain again. This sidewalk, we used to have prairie petunia all growing along the edge of the sidewalk, and it was real messy and ugly, and I dug it all out. I kill a lot of things, but you see, it gets a little aggressive. Oh yeah. The deal about this Robbins plantain is that it's a cultivar. It's from near Virginia Beach, Virginia. And it's more vigorous. It has a bigger flower and it's more vigorous than others. I've started coming to the conclusion that it's a little thuggish. And I contacted somebody who works in the mid-Atlantic states and says, do you find that cultivar to be thuggish? And she said, no, it gets so hot here in the summertime that it goes dormant for a couple of months. Here it doesn't get that hot in the summer. And so it keeps going, and you'll see, oh yeah, this is the other thing about cultivars, is if these spiderworts were cultivars, they'd all be the same color. But in the real world, there's so much variety in our straight species. Seed-grown straight species plants are just better in so many ways. But here, you see, this is the Robbins plantain. You see this allium here? It's growing into it. And I've had it completely overrun a little blue stem. So going with the straight species, I would recommend is probably a better idea around here. And it does grow around here, and you can get it from native plant sales. But what I prefer, and I'm learning to prefer to the Robbins plantain, is the plantain-leafed pussy toes. It always has American painted lady caterpillars on it. I mean, always. I've never seen anything like it. This on the left is what it looks like right now. But it doesn't, as soon as we get some nice weather, it just plumps right up and starts growing. This on the right is evidence of the fact that I never take before pictures. This was a clump, a nice clump that would have made a beautiful picture, but I didn't take the picture after I had already divided off of it. All the bare soil you see is places where there were plants, and I dug starts and planted them other places. Do that in the fall and spring. We water it in and forget about it, and they pretty much take care of themselves. And they spread out and take over places. This is a friend's Parkway garden. Pretty simple. The violets came in on their own. She planted some prairie smoke and some pussy toes. and it's just taking care of business. So some good, cool season ground covers to use around here that I recommend all of these. Prairie smoke, pussy toes, robin's plantain, wild ginger in a shadier spot. Strawberries can take some shade. Allegheny spurge. Anybody here ever mess with that? It's our native Pachysandra. There's an author, I can't think of his name right now. He refers to the Oriental Pachysandra as the vinyl siding of American ground covers. But the native is hardy here. Here's a clump. This time of year, it's that green. It really fills in. It blooms very early. It has smelly flowers because it attracts flies. It's before most of the bees are in business. So Allegheny spurge is a great plant that isn't native to Northern Illinois. It's native to the East Coast, but it's really useful and it does provide ecological function. Well, okay. And then, wild violets, sedges, Mount Cuba Center, if you're not familiar with them, but they do garden evaluations on native plants. And they did a sedge evaluation a few years ago, and they're definitely worth checking out. Ones that we have worked with ourselves are these listed on the bottom that are all pretty well behaved, except sort of the Sparangellii, the long-beaked sedge. It's a woodland sedge, and this is what it looks like right now. I took this picture just a couple days ago. But it grows in so thick that, here's what it'll look like in a couple of weeks and shortly after that. And the area where this Sparangellii grows, I never pull a weed. It's not that something doesn't come up once in a while, but I mean, it's weed proof. It's amazing. And, one thing that Doug Tallamy talks about is our tree, as far as feeding baby birds, we need caterpillars to feed baby birds. And most of the caterpillars, they need plants that they co-evolve with to eat. And so the adults are only going to lay their eggs on certain plants. And most of the plants that they lay their eggs on are trees. And the king of them, of course, or the queen, depending on whatever, is the oak tree. So if you live in a place where you have a parkway planting with an oak tree in it, if you planted nothing but long-beaked sedge, what Doug talks about is if it's turf underneath there, those caterpillars are going to finish their job and then they're going to drop to the ground. They're going to want to wiggle into the ground and pupate and then come up as butterflies or moths later. But if it's lawn, they're not going to make it in there. And if it's a crusted over wood chip mulch bed, because wood chips, they glue themselves together as the summer goes on. And when it gets slow enough on the mowing, then the landscape contractors send their guys all out with cultivators to what Roy Dibblick calls fluff up the mulch, because it'll get sealed over to where oxygen and water can't move in and out of it, and it's not a good environment for anything to live in. So you have to fluff up the stupid wood chip mulch. And also to let the caterpillars crawl in. So just don't mess with that. Use live plants instead of mulch. So I think this stuff, just a solid planting of that. You could put a few things in it for accent, but that, will serve a lot of ecological function, which is what we're trying to do, is improve the ecological function of our communities. Okay, some other things that they're not ground covers, but that because they bloom early in the year, they, like the penstemons, I've got a picture, I guess it's not here, of the penstemons in January, and there's no soil showing between them. It's just solid. The alum root is great. Golden Alexander doesn't cover the ground at all. but it's so aggressive so early in the year. The purple poppy mallow doesn't bloom until maybe July, but it forms a winter rosette, and there's no weeds coming up within that rosette. Prairie dropseed covers the ground beautifully. Don't clean it up very much. Any of the bee balms work. Geraniums, of course, are wonderful. We've finally, after having a couple of geraniums in an adjacent garden originally 12, 13 years ago, we now have geraniums scattered through the whole yard. And in the past year, I've, for the first time, started removing geraniums, editing some out, because it's getting to be there's too many of them. Woodland phlox covers ground early in the season, and Virginia bluebells, they not only cover ground early in the season, then they completely disappear. So you can have anything else growing there while you're at it. This is something that I just, royal catchfly, Silene regia, best plant in my yard for hummingbirds. The day the first bloom opens at 5 o'clock in the morning, there's a hummingbird on that bloom. How did that hummingbird even know about this plant? It didn't bloom until yesterday, but I have noticed, it's called catchfly because it's sticky and things stick to it. I saw a pretty good sized bee stuck on this last year. So you see all these little flies and little things stuck in here. This is first thing in the morning. I'm pretty sure that when the hummingbirds come in to hunt for nectar, that they're cleaning those suckers up, because you don't see all those that you'd think they'd be building up as the summer went on. They're not. I have not seen the hummingbirds actually eat them, but it's my idea. Okay, so let's talk about watering, just because that's part of maintenance, and we're not going to take very much time on this. Remember always, just like with houseplants, people kill more of them with water, with too much water than with not enough. Plant roots need oxygen. Different plants, wetland plants, don't need as much oxygen. That's why they can take wet places, they can take compacted soil. Often they need more. This is soil. Well, this is a representation of soil. This isn't real soil, but soil has particles and it has pore spaces in between. And if, say, half of those pore spaces are full of water, then everybody's happy. There's oxygen, there's water, everybody's living. But as the amount of water goes down, the plants get dry. As the amount of water goes up, the plants start to suffocate, they start to drown. They can hold their breath for a little while, but not forever. And it's not just the plants. There's all these guys, all the microbes that live in the ground. The plants, every plant in your yard is taking about a third of the sugar that it produces through photosynthesis, and it's feeding it out the root tips to the microbes, who when they metabolize that sugar, byproduct of their metabolism of that sugar is plant growth hormones that go up into the tops of the plants and cause the buds to elongate and grow. So the plants wouldn't even grow if it wasn't for the microbes. They're really important, and they need oxygen. If you let your soil get too waterlogged, you might have experienced where it turns sour. That's because the aerobic microbes died and the anaerobic microbes took over, and they're producing carbon dioxide and other things that aren't helping. So so we need to water with this in mind. Keep this in mind all the time. So we're thoroughly watering all plants immediately after planting. Do this by hand. Don't just turn a sprinkler on. And do it in any activity that you can do. If you can make an aerobic activity, it's better, right? That's why we're not sitting in front of our TVs. So moving around, water. You want to put a little extra water right where the plant is to make sure you get good contact between the roots and the soil. But other than that, we don't want to drown it. So we want to water here, we want to water there, we want to water there, we want to go eat lunch and come back and maybe water a little more just to make sure. Don't rely on impending rain. If it's going to rain, that's wonderful. One thing about rain is that it's got nitrogen and oxygen in those drops. And if your soil is already wet, those gases are going to dissolve right into your soil. If your soil's dry, then a lot of those gases are going to air back out. So our vegetable garden at home, we see a storm coming. If it's dry and we see a storm coming, we go water it lightly. And then it takes better advantage of the rain when it comes. Yeah, don't rely on the irrigation system. They're stupid. They don't know how wet the soil is. They don't know anything. And I've had people put plants in the ground and then turn on the irrigation system and go home. And I had to go back and hand water everything. Some plants might never receive, and this is for real. This planting here, this was at the Shed Aquarium. I was hired by a contractor to maintain this 1 day a week. When the first part was put in, it was 19,000 square feet. I worked on the install crew, and they had a guy out there with a hose splashing water around, not really doing anything effective. But I came back the next day and spent 11 hours straight watering in every plant. There were big trees, there were little plugs, there was everything in between. And some of them, and we were planting in construction rubble, basically. And some of them I'd soak the plant and then step on it, just to make sure, because it was such a tough condition to make sure. But when after that, I came back once a week. I would water the places with the woody plants. I'd put sprinklers where the woody plants were. Where there weren't any woody plants, I never put a sprinkler there. We lost one plant all summer. Because if we had not had timely rains, I would have done more watering, but we had timely enough rains that it worked. And we had one shrub, a Viburnum castanoides, that died. That was it. Established native gardens almost never require watering. New gardens, you want to keep them moist. Don't think wet, think moist. You can't tell the difference. If all those pores have nothing in them, or if they're all completely full of water, the roots are not going to be happy, and the plant's going to show that the roots aren't happy. But you don't know which it is until you dig into the soil and find out. And the best thing about an irrigation system is an off switch. In an established garden, if you already have an irrigation system, that's great. Use it. But don't expect the timer to know when it needs water. That's what the gardener is for. You come home from work, you look at your garden, you feel the soil, go crank up the thing for 15 minutes. And maybe water with your irrigation system for 15 minutes, leave it off for an hour, water for another 15 minutes, so that the water soaks in without drowning anything. I was going to say this is when if you have any questions about watering, but we're going to do questions later. So ignore my question marks. They just tell me we're going to the next topic. Weeds. Preventing problems is the key to maintenance, so kill them before they even exist. With cool season ground covers, helps a lot. Whatever you do, you want to disturb the soil as little as possible. And that makes fewer weeds and happier microbes. When you're not digging up those communities that are living in your soil, disrupting them. These are the tools that I use, and I'm gonna grab this. These are wonderful tools. You can get in anywhere with this, and you do your work standing up like this. You just shave the surface of the earth. You're not digging the weeds out. You're just shaving them off. And if they're seedlings, that's all it takes. That is called a diamond bladed push pull scuffle hoe. Yeah. I hate it when people ask that question. No, that's what it's called. We get them from an outfit called Earth Tools. They're kind of pricey, but well worth it. The thing about if you buy them online or to where they're going to be shipped to you, it's a 6-foot long box. So 4 of them cost as much to ship as 1 of them. So we generally buy them in 4s and give them to people for wedding presents or other things that they don't expect. So, okay, we'll put that there for right now. All right. So you might, if you're looking at these tools, which of these tools doesn't look like a weeding tool? The pruners. What's that for? Well, you can take little trees. Whoops. Oop. Yeah, that's a little Siberian elm tree. Plunge your pruners into the ground. Cut a little tree like that. Most little trees like that, you cut it off an inch below the ground, it's not coming back. If it can get sunlight to the stump that you leave, then it will sprout back, but most trees won't. So you just do that. If I had pulled that tree out, all that soil disturbance, all the weed seed that's in that soil that I pull up, then I'm creating more work for myself down the road. But by just snipping that off, it's dead. So pruners is a request. Is this gonna work? Isn't that sweet? Yeah, it's a video. I have 2 of them. I didn't know that would happen. Like, can you? Or I can just talk. Oh, yeah, yeah. That's not gonna work. All right, well, this video is me with one of these hoes. We had just planted a new herb garden, and I had gone in, I probably planted it in May. My wife had started the plants from seed in April. We probably put them in the ground in May. In June, I went in with this hoe and just worked around everything. And then about a month and a half later, I did it again. And that's the video that we don't get to see is from that. And you can work really close to things with a hoe like that. So some roots. These are tap roots, all right? Taproot is energy storage. If you just cut that off, it's gonna sprout back. We've all experienced that with dandelions. So you have to, so if something is established, if this is a brand new dandelion that just came up last week and you shave it off with that hoe, you don't have to worry about it anymore. You don't have to get the root out. But when they're established, you have to get them out. These are tap roots. These are fibrous roots. And the thing about fibrous roots is that this area right here, the crown of the plant, that's all that needs to be removed. Everything from, if you could cut that off right there and leave all this other stuff in the ground, it's dead. That stuff's just gonna decompose, gonna feed your other plants. So, the problem is this is prairie petunia. A lot of plants like the grasses, the crown, this part right here is right at the soil or even above the soil line. So it's really easy to slice underneath it and to remove it. This is prairie petunia. And the crown is 3-4 inches below the ground. So it's a nightmare. When we had let these get loose in our garden and decided that they were too messy, and it was quite a project, but I got them all out. I'll be doing it forever, you know, because there are seeds there and they're gonna keep coming up. But yeah, but that's all you need to do on the fibrous rooted plants is get the crown out. Another underground Energy storage is this is quackgrass rhizomes. Each little node here is capable of creating a whole infestation. So you have to be really thorough to get these out. And the next video, which you also won't be able to see, is me on my knees with a spade, because those quackgrass rhizomes, they just ride about 3 inches below the surface of the ground. So if you dig 4 inches below horizontally and lift them up, you can get them all. It takes, you have to repeat it because a 1/4 inch of that is all you need. And you're gonna come back a month later and it's gonna be, you're gonna have, your infestation isn't gone. So it takes years, in my experience, to kill quackgrass in particular. These are just some tap roots. I don't even know what those are. So the next video, oh yeah, right. These are rhizomes, which are not roots, they're underground stems. Yes? Oh, okay. This is another video you're not gonna get to see. And this is what's growing in that spot now, where the quackgrass was. It took me 5 years to get rid of it, but I did an herbicide application one time for a Roy Diblick sedge meadow. Did an herbicide application on this lawn, didn't really understand lawn as well then as I do now. And got a really good kill, and Roy came in, laid out all these beautiful sedges, made a beautiful planting, and I went back 5 years later and it was just a sea of quackgrass. Because the chemical hadn't translocated far enough through those rhizomes to kill all the way to the end. And so it's like you haven't done anything. What I've done is I've selected for quackgrass by killing all the other grasses. But got rid of it here, and that's pretty pretty. This is another plant that grows by rhizomes. These tall goldenrods, okay. People refer to Canada goldenrod, Missouri goldenrod, tall goldenrod, whatever. I can never figure out which one they are. They spread by rhizomes, which you see here. And this is just a first-year plant, very innocuous looking, but these are really aggressive. And what I learned last summer was that on the underside of all the bad ones, what I've always done in the past is when I see one, I don't know what it is, I just dig up the first one I see, and if it has rhizomes, I keep digging. If it doesn't, I say, oops. But on the underside of the leaf, on all the aggressive ones, there's distinct 3 lines. So instead of calling them Canada, Missouri, whatever, and never knowing if what you're saying is right, we can just call them 3-line goldenrod and we're good. Just when you see the 3 lines, kill it. Yeah, but they're very innocuous. You don't see them that they're doing things. So there are a lot of plants that are really hard to kill. If you live in an established neighborhood where people have been planting all these perennial garden thugs for the past 50 years, you hate this stuff. You can't grow a good garden when you've got this stuff growing. And I used to be an herbicide applicator. I have killed everything on this list successfully with chemicals, except I don't know that I've ever killed quackgrass or field bindweed. 5 years later, it's there because the field bindweed can have a 30-foot root system and the chemical isn't going to travel that far. So I had a problem with my next door neighbor's yard because almost everything on that, everything except smooth brome on that list was in this area. And right here is my property line. So the stuff's creeping into my yard all the time. And I asked this gardener if I could try something. And she said yes. And I listened for a chipper truck when there was a tree crew working in the neighborhood. And when I heard it, I went over and talked to the guys and had them dump a whole load of green wood chips. These can't be from a dead tree, live green wood chips, spread them out about 1.5 feet thick. believe it or not. You know, this is radical, but it works. The next summer, 2 Canada thistle came up. I pulled them up, they died. They never came back. All kinds of stuff, some of the gout weeds, some of the field bindweed kept coming up. I kept hoeing them off. Most things quit, but after a short time, I realized the field bindweed wasn't going away. So I got another load. And I put another foot on top of the field bindweed, and then I spread out. And today, this was taken last week, off here in the distance, that's some pachysandra and some goutweed that, or no, probably something else, that has come up through the wood chips. There's no bindweed in that goutweed, in that pachysandra. The bindweed died. I'm trying. And it works. It's rotted down enough. I've started planting a few little trees and bushes in it. But I started this project in 2018, and now it's almost done. And the only problem is that over here, this is my property line. Over here, the bindweed had already crept over into my property, so now it's creeping back. Oh well. Okay, but you got to do radical things like that if you want to have something that's that pretty. All right, questions about that? Editing, weeding out perfectly good plants that happen to be in the wrong place. You look at something like this, and we like to leave the seed heads for many reasons, but when you have seed heads, they're beautiful, and volunteer plants come up, and they can come up in the most perfect place and be just gorgeous, but they can also make something that just isn't that pretty, although it's great in many ways, it isn't good enough. So you have to remove things. This is where I took a whole bunch of sedges out of an area, because I always have Carex blanda and Sperengii come up all over in my garden. So I'm always pulling out sedges. This is an area over here. You see, these are all little baby sedges that just came up. That's an opportunity. When you see something like that, you can leave it alone. You can change the conformation. You can dig, these are little penstemons over here. You can dig up some penstemons, make a hole where the sedges aren't so much, and put them and change your composition. But you know, these are all opportunities when you have volunteer plants come up. Oh, that's the same picture. Okay, and this is in my yard. When we first started this garden, we had a couple of asters move in, white, weedy asters. I don't even know what they are. They moved in, they were welcome at first, but it got to be too much. So one year I removed a whole bunch of them, and then the common milkweed came in on its own and was getting too aggressive and was just taking up too much room. And so what I started doing was every year we'd let the common milkweed bloom. And then after it was done blooming, I would look for eggs, monarch caterpillar eggs and caterpillars. And any plant that had one on it, I would leave it. And anyone that didn't, I would remove it. And it's gotten to where this garden, although there's a lot of milkweed in this picture, it doesn't overwhelm it. And this year I didn't have to remove any. It worked. Yeah. And then cleanups. This is, which we don't want to clean anything up. We want to cut stuff back. This is my poster child for leaving the leaves. This is a comma butterfly. You're never going to see that. I don't care how carefully you're working in your yard. You're not going to find that. It was a miracle I did. It was just chance. But these spend the winter in our gardens, in the leaf litter, as adult butterflies. In the spring, their caterpillars live on almost any kind of native tree. So in the spring, when the trees start leafing out, these are going to fly up and lay eggs. And that's going to be the caterpillars that feed the first generation of baby birds that spring. So the moths do the heavy lifting. Doug Talamy sent me this picture and that piece of wisdom. The Luna moth, the Polyphemus moth, they feed a lot of stuff early in the season. You notice we get baby birds before we see very many butterflies? It's because they're eating, their babies have been eating moth caterpillars. But we don't see the moths fly because they fly at night. And this is the incomparable Horacio Suarez taking down a big north wind panicum. And these are a couple of screenshots from a video that's 1 minute and 22 seconds long, and he takes that thing completely down. I don't recommend using a weed whacker. I don't recommend anything with the 2-cycle engine on it. They're awful. We can go into that. But he did this whole thing in about 15 minutes. He cleaned up this whole bed, a bunch of north wind panicums, and it's ready to go. It's done for the spring. What I recommend is a battery-powered hedge trimmer to chop things up nice and small. This is a Deschampsia at my house. You can see the pruners. That's what I use because I don't have a battery-powered hedge trimmer. I use that. This is just about this time of year last year. Looks terrible. 45 minutes. It doesn't look great, but it looks a little more on purpose than it did. 2 days later, I took that picture. A week later, I took that picture. It doesn't take long once March gets here. And again, a picture that Christine used also. We do use daffodils and tulips and hyacinths. I'd like to direct your attention right down here to these little purple flowers that everybody should be growing more of if they have sun and decent drainage. And that is pasque-flower, which is a great plant. It takes about 5 years from a plug before they really start blooming, but we're in the 6th year this year. So, in summary, the summary is really nothing you don't already know. To maintain a highly visible garden, we got to water, weed, edit, cut back. But mainly, you need to have a gardener who's present in the garden. That's the thing that's going to make the most difference in your landscape. So I would like to thank these people provided us with some of these pictures that we used. Nadia is not around here. She's near Dayton, Ohio, but the other people all have businesses in the Chicago area. These are all good people to work with. Casey specializes in maintenance. She does a lot of work at Millennium Park and specializes in maintenance. Great organizations. And that's it.
Okay, hey, everybody. I know you're all thinking about your lovely afternoon snack. It's definitely time. So while we're going to have questions and answers, but please feel free to come on back and have some of this wonderful food. And you can get up while there's questions and answers going on, and make sure that it's all compostable. So it's a zero waste event today.
And we're going to start with questions from the virtual guests before we end the Zoom. Okay. Will the speaker cover how to implement a new parkway garden, preparing the poor abused dirt?
Hello, does this work?
Okay, we're going to just try to ask a few of the online questions.
I'm going to introduce our new participant, though. So we have our...
Yes.
All right, so we have our speakers up here. We also have a new face. So because if you're thinking about planting in your parkways, you're going to be interacting with the trees and shrubs that are maintained by the village. We have here today Grant Jones, who's the village forest superintendent. He is responsible for managing the 18,000 trees on the village's parkways and properties. Previously, he was city arborist for the city of Bowling Green, Ohio, the IPM specialist at Longwood Gardens, and technical advisory for the Davy Tree Expert Company. He's a board certified master arborist and has tree risk assessment qualification. And so is a great resource if you have any questions about your native plants and how they interact with the village's trees.
Okay, I'm getting that first online question. Which was, will the speaker, one of you, cover how to implement a new parkway garden, preparing the poor abused dirt?
I missed the beginning of that. Could you repeat that?
Can you talk a little about how to implement a new parkway garden, how to prepare the dirt if it's poor?
Okay, well, prepare, you want to enrich the dirt? You're planting native plants, you don't need to enrich the dirt. You might be so compacted in a parkway, but you don't want to disturb the soil any more than you have to. And there's people from Cornell Horticulture Department have come up with a system for highly compacted soil where they dump. They're working on a large scale, but they'll dump like up to a foot of compost on an area and then take a backhoe and just pick up big chunks of soil and then put them right back where they were. But it lets all that compost run in there, which lets the oxygen get in and it feeds the microbes and it disturbs things less. Now, we're not going to do that in a parkway, but you could put several inches of compost and then take a shovel if you have really compacted soil, and that's an issue. But if you don't, just plant native plants and it'll take care of it. Yes. Oh,
Okay.
she's gonna.
I have a question about wood chips. I got a sort of mixed message from your presentation. Could you just describe a correct or proper use of wood chip mulch?
Yeah, it's ending. Yeah, wood chip mulch. I have never in any horticulture reference book seen a reference to putting wood chip mulch on herbaceous plants. Never. Although even though it's done all the time, and the way people use wood chip mulch around trees is better than nothing if you go ahead and cultivate on a regular basis. The only thing I use wood chips for is pathways myself.
Okay. So I took a delivery of wood chip mulch from the village at fall. Didn't know what to do with it, so I spread it around on beds. So have I made a mistake? Do I need to get it off now?
I mean, they'll decompose and yeah, they're not hurt. Yeah, I don't use them, and I don't know anybody in horticulture who does. It's the landscape industry that uses them because they have a resource they need to market, and for short term maybe, but
when we do our tree work, we have a lot of wood chips that we generate, and so people are always like looking for. All right. So when our crews go and do tree work, we do generate a lot of wood chips. So we get requests from residents for wood chips, and we deliver those to the parkways, or sometimes if we have a big storm, they're down at Ream. It's a way for us to get rid of our wood waste that we generate. I don't know if it would make a difference in this situation, but they would have sat there all fall and winter. And so there would have been some chance for them to probably compost a little bit. When we deliver our wood chips, they are raw. So we don't have the space to do any composting of them to kind of let them break down. They're raw wood chips.
So, yeah, we're gonna do a few more
But I would pay
some,
attention to where you put them and see if it looks like you're getting some kind of reduction in vitality in the plants that you've put them around. Because I had an experience at the shed once where I got a bunch of compost from some landscaper, and when they put it in, everything seemed fine, and we planted, all our annuals and all our things, and then they died. They just turned red. The plants turned red, and the same plants across on the other side of the sidewalk did not. And it turned out that the compost wasn't finished, and so it was taking energy. And we couldn't even get a seed to germinate in that space for 3 years. So I would just look and see if it looks like it's doing anything. It might not be. I mean, this was quite a bit of compost.
Some of the things she planted that first year did come up 3 years later. The seeds just sat there and waited till the conditions are right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Interested in thoughts about bigger plants or shrubs for the parkway, like Rosa Blanda or Carolina?
I didn't follow that, sorry.
We have a question about your thoughts on bigger plants or shrubs for the parkway, like Rosa Blanda or Carolina.
Well, you're gonna have to watch the height of the plant. But small shrubs, sure. Yeah, Itea, a Rosa Blanda might work for you. Yeah, Carolina can get bigger than that, but with a little work, you could keep it in bounds. Yes.
I think the other thing I would add about that, in terms of everything going on in the parkways, if there is digging, when I get questions from residents, I always recommend going with grasses or perennials, just because in theory, there's a chance that, you could dig and transplant those plants temporarily until that whatever type of utility work that's going on in the parkway is over. If you put in shrubs, I think it's going to be harder to kind of temporarily move them and store them elsewhere if you ended up in that situation. Along with the height concerns, so.
We're going to move to in-person questions, and thank you all for coming online.